Alrighty gamers, hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Rob and this channel is all about PS5 Pro content. So we've had 3 months with the PS5 Pro now and yeah, why not make a review on it? So here we are. Do I recommend the PS5 Pro? Yes and no, and I will go into greater detail later on in the video on why I do and why I don't and who is it for. And look, I'm not a PlayStation fanboy. I know I named my channel PS5 Pro Rob, so I mean obviously this channel is all about PlayStation content, but I'm not a Sony pony. I'm not a console warrior or whatever. I really hate that kind of stuff. Like the gaming community now, it's just so damn toxic and it's ridiculous. I'm not for that. I'm gonna point out some good things, I'm gonna point out some bad things, and I'm just gonna be very objective. I'm not trying to sell the PlayStation 5 Pro. Look, the reason why I'm into PlayStation is, well, because of this, right here, Metal Gear Solid. So I started with the PlayStation 1, and this is the reason why I'm still here playing games, loving games the way I am today. If it wasn't for Metal Gear Solid, I don't think I'd be here now. So that's also the reason why I actually chose PlayStation in the first place. Because look, I think for 3 generations, the franchise Metal Gear Solid, it was exclusive to PlayStation. It's not anymore, and I think that's a good thing because everyone should experience the games. Look, I just love gaming, and I just want to have fun. I'm trying to stay away from all the negative stuff, especially like within the gaming community that you see today on like social media. It's just gone way too far and out of hand, and yeah, I'm not about that. So everyone is welcome to this channel, whether you're on Xbox or PC or Nintendo, PlayStation, it doesn't matter. We're all friends. We're all here for the same reason. We love great games. That's why we game. So what I'm gonna do in the video now is I'm gonna cover a whole bunch of games running on the PS5 Pro, obviously. And I'm gonna talk about each game and see how they look and how they perform, and what Pro upgrades are good, which ones that are bad, you know. And some are mixed, and some are like really good, and some are just actually pretty bad. So I'm gonna go into all of that, and then by the end of the video, I'm coming to a final verdict. So be sure to stick around for that. But yeah, let's get into it. But first, if you enjoy the video, please give it a like. If you don't, give it a dislike and comment. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve. And if you want to see more PS5 Pro content, you know what to do. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching.
Let's kick off the video with one of the best PS5 Pro enhancements so far, and it's a new game. It's Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and what this game does on the PS5 Pro is very, very impressive and pretty surprising. Come to think that it's actually it's not even a AAA developer that has basically made the best Pro enhancement to date. So pretty damn impressive by Warhorse how they managed to implement the PSSR to get the game running in basically fidelity mode at 60 frames per second. But also if you got VRR, it can go above 60 FPS. So on the base PS5 and also the Xbox Series X, in fidelity mode, the game is capped at 30 FPS. And basically on the Pro, it combines the fidelity mode with the performance mode. So it takes the visuals from the fidelity mode, but then it takes the performance from the performance mode. So we really get the best of both worlds. So really amazing upgrade from Warhorse. And yeah, it's the future of the PS5 Pro is looking very, very bright. And this definitely has to be the second best PS5 Pro upgrade for sure. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So the game looks just vastly different from the base PS5 to the PS5 Pro. Like if you look at the performance mode, it's kind of like a generational leap, really, because the difference is just so vast. It's just crazy. I don't have a comparison here right now, but if you're interested, you can just easily look it up, and it's really a freaking night and day difference. So Square Enix used the PSSR upscaler to upscale the resolution to 4K to achieve the sharp image that we now have. Now let's jump over to Stellar Blade, and now that is another stellar PS5 Pro enhancement. So you got the Pro Max mode and you got the Pro mode. Now I'm playing in the Pro Max mode currently, and what this does is it's prioritizing the resolution. So it's basically a native 4K resolution right now. So it does not prioritize the frame rate in any way, and the frame rate is around 50 to 60 FPS. But if you want higher frame rates, there you want to go with the Pro mode that I'm gonna switch over to right now, and also be sure to use the high frame rate mode as well if you do have a 120 Hz display with VRR, because the game is just amazing, and it looks even better than the Pro Max mode, because it really takes full advantage of the PSSR to upscale the image quality, and it just looks incredible. And the game then runs at 80 FPS if you do have a 120 Hz display with VRR. Absolutely stellar. Gran Turismo 7, another game that really begs you to have a 120 Hz display with VRR. Now, Polyphony Digital, they are technical wizards, really. Like, the game, you can play the game with ray traced reflections on in 4K, and the game is basically a solid 60 frames per second. And you can also play the game in 8K, but without the ray traced reflections, and it pretty much locked 60 FPS if you have a VRR display. And it can drop a couple of frames every now and again, not often at all, but it does happen. And also, it does have a high frame rate mode as well, if you do have a 120 Hz display. So the frame rate is actually pretty much a locked 120 frames per second. That is just sick, smooth gameplay. And yeah, what can I say? This is a powerhouse on the PS5 Pro. It's really amazing what they've done with the PSSR. So if you have the PSSR enabled, that's when you really get pretty much locked 60 FPS if you're playing with the ray traced reflections on in 4K. If you do turn the PSSR upscaler off, it does dip below 60, down into the lower 50s. Now let's move on to another technical masterpiece, Horizon Forbidden West. So this game is probably one of the absolute best looking games of all time. And then I'm not just talking about PS5 Pro games here, just games in general. Like this game, oh my gosh, this is so darn gorgeous. Guerrilla Games, another studio that are just technical wizards when it comes to fidelity and performance. So funny enough though, this game is not using PSSR. They are basically using their own upscaling solution. Call it Guerrilla Super Resolution, if you will. But this game is really, really incredible. Digital Foundry, they're even comparing the PS5 Pro version to that of a high-end PC in terms of graphics, and that's pretty nuts. There are 3 modes on the PS5 Pro. The Resolution Pro mode is a locked 30 FPS, and the balance mode is a locked 40 FPS, but that's only available if you do have a 120 Hz display with VRR. And the Performance Pro mode is a locked 60 FPS throughout, even without a 120 Hz display. But if you do have a 120 Hz display, the frame rate can go a bit higher to the 70s. Man, I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but Spider-Man 2, another graphical masterpiece. So the game does have 2 modes, so the Fidelity Pro mode and the Performance Pro mode. And this is another game that really takes advantage of the 120 Hz display with VRR. It's really gonna make a pretty big difference, honestly. So if you play in the Fidelity Pro mode with like the maximum settings with all the ray tracing set to high, and if you have the VRR set to uncapped, the game is staying around 40 to 50 FPS. It even goes up to like 55 at times. So it's really, really freaking impressive. And on the Performance Pro mode, if you have 120 Hz display and you got the VR set to uncapped, the frame rate is around 60 to 70. But if you do not have 120 Hz display, the performance pro mode is locked to 60 and the fidelity pro mode is locked to 30. Now I'm going to talk about a game that I have a lot of love for and also some mixed feelings about because it just had so much potential. So the game is the Callisto Protocol, and they have really made this game shine on the PS5 Pro, where the game, you can play the game in fidelity mode at 60 FPS. Absolutely incredible. And they also added a 40 FPS mode, so with even higher fidelity, but you get a lot, yeah, you get a locked 40 FPS experience. But not only that, they also added a 8K mode to the game. So yeah, pretty nuts. But the game is then capped to 30 FPS. But like playing this game in fidelity mode at 60 FPS is a real treat. And like so far from everything that I've played, it's just a locked 60, even like in the really demanding areas like this one right here that you see. So yeah, I have a lot of love for this game, but it's definitely not a perfect game though. But the PS5 Pro upgrade, I gotta say, it's perfect. Demon Souls remake. This is one of those PS5 Pro upgrades that you don't see very often, but these kind of upgrades are the ones that we really want, the ones that Mark Cerny really promised us, the way he marketed the PS5 Pro. So what this game does is, well, you have a PS5 Pro mode, and what it does, it's very simple. You get to play the game at fidelity mode, so the highest level of graphics, but then you get that 60 FPS. So that isn't that what we all want though? We get like that perfect balance really between fidelity and performance. Well, where they just merge the two together and you get the best of both worlds. So there are not many games that do this, but yeah, Demon Souls is one of those few that does it. And holy crap, this game still looks phenomenal. And this was a PS5 launch game. Resident Evil 4. It's pretty impressive on the PS5 Pro, though it was already pretty impressive on the base PS5 already. If you had a 120 Hz display with VRR, because then you could activate the high frame rate mode. But still, like back on the base PS5, the game could occasionally dip to like the 40s and 50s FPS. You know, if you maxed out all the settings, you got the hair strands on, you got all the ray tracing on, and you play in the resolution mode. But on the PS5 Pro, the game runs noticeably better, especially if you have a 120 Hz display with VRR. And I mean, if you don't have that, then the game is going to be a locked 60 FPS with everything maxed out. But if you have a 120 Hz display with VRR, the frame rate can go up to 90 FPS. So it really hovers between 60 and 90 FPS. Most of the time during my play session, it was actually sticking around the 80s and 90s FPS throughout most of my time. Like sometimes in like really chaotic encounters, then it could dip to the 60s, and that was seriously like the lowest I ever got. So that is pretty damn impressive. Let's jump over to another Resident Evil game, Resident Evil 8 Village. So the performance on the Pro is really stunning in this game too, just like Resident Evil 4. So if you play the game with the max settings, with the ray tracing on, and have the high frame rate on, if you got a 120 Hz display with VRR, then the frame rate is between like 55 and 90 FPS. But if you turn the ray tracing off, the game is basically a locked 120 FPS. But let's say you do not have a 120 Hz display with VRR and you only got a 60 Hz display, then yeah, you don't really get those benefits of the higher frame rate. So you just get a 60 FPS whether you choose to play with ray tracing on or off. The RE engine is really one of the best engines out there, where they just managed to pack so much punch in terms of graphics with the RE engine. But not only that, it always performs very, very well. So the RE engines must be one of my favorites out there, seriously. Though there is one downside to the PS5 Pro version, and that is the PSSR. So with the upscaling, it can cause a little bit of shimmering and some artifacts, like in some trees and some grass, and also like the hair can look slightly worse on the Pro actually because of the PSSR. But it's not very noticeable unless you just compare them side by side. Call of Duty Black Ops 6, believe it or not, but this PS5 Pro enhancement is actually quite substantial. So the PS5 Pro version boasts improved visual settings at 60 Hz, which includes enhanced shadow resolution, global illumination, ambient occlusion, and screen space reflections. And the game uses PSSR to upscale the image to 4K resolution. And there is a 120 Hz mode, and if you toggle that on, the fidelity is lowered to that of the base PS5 version, but at double the frame rate. So we can actually play the game at 120 frames per second in the 120 Hz mode. That is pretty freaking awesome. So the PS5 Pro enhancement for Call of Duty Black Ops 6 is very, very impressive. Let's jump on to another Souls-like game, Lies of P, and honestly, this is probably my favorite Souls-like game. But the game is Pro enhanced, and there are two modes. So there's one that is centered around quality, so high fidelity at 30 FPS, and the other one is performance. But there is actually a third option, and that is you can turn on the high frame rate mode if you have a 120 Hz display, but you can only do so if you have the if you are running the game at quality mode. So you get a 40 FPS experience. And like I said, you do need a 120 Hz display for that one. But the performance mode is actually running at 4K now, and it's a locked 60 FPS. On the base PS5, you can still get that 60 FPS, but the resolution is just a lot lower. So it's fluctuating like somewhere between 12p up to 1800p. So it's a dynamic resolution, but now on the Pro, it's just a 4K image. Let's move on to yet another Souls-like game, Lords of the Fallen. It's a really, really impressive showcase on the PS5 Pro, as the pixel density has been increased by 40%, and there's also a enhanced performance mode now running at 4K 60 FPS, but the internal resolution is at 1440p, but then it's upscaled to 4K, and there's a quality mode running at native 4K 30 FPS. I must say though, I think this game is just way underrated and gets way too much hate, because I am actually loving this game. I know they had a very, very rough launch, but they have come a long way with this game right now, and it's so great now. Well, what do you know? Yet another Souls-like game. Black Myth Wukong has been PS5 Pro enhanced, and it's not all that substantial. There has been a new mode added for those with a 120 Hz display, so there's a balance mode, and the balance mode looks pretty much the same as the fidelity mode, except the shadow details are just slightly lowered. And then we have the performance mode though, which that one is actually running significantly better over the base PS5, because it really manages to hit the 60 FPS target a lot better. It does drop a couple of frames every now and again, but not often at all, so it's a pretty damn solid experience now. Alan Wake 2. Not a great showcase on the PS5 Pro yet, except for the 40 FPS balance mode that they added. That one actually seems to be a pretty locked 40 FPS with really high fidelity. So that one is very impressive. But the performance mode is nowhere near a locked 60 FPS, so that is a real bummer. The fidelity mode at 30 FPS is a locked experience, and the same goes for the 40 FPS mode too. But that one does require a 120 Hz display. Both of these modes are absolutely gorgeous. The game is just stunning with all the ray tracing and everything. But yeah, damn shame about the performance mode. Sometimes even the base PS5 performs slightly higher, like even like especially like in the forested areas where it can be like have like a 3 FPS advantage. But hopefully they're gonna fix this one. I really hope so. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Now this game has been vastly improved since the last patch, and the game looks and runs a whole lot better now with the latest patch that updates the PSSR upscaler. But the game is pretty much a locked 60 frames per second now, which is really awesome to see because this game, wow, this game has been a real freaking mess since the game launched, and it shouldn't even have been released in that state. They should have delayed the game a lot, but that's a problem these days, right? It's happening more often than it should. But the game is now actually very impressive on the PS5 Pro. Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine 2. This PS5 Pro upgrade is not all that great. I mean, it is definitely boosted by quite a lot, but unfortunately, the frame rate is a little bit all over the place. Sometimes with when there's a lot of swarms of enemies, like when you get like hundreds of enemies just coming at you, like it can actually dip to as low as to like the high 40s though. But most of the time it stays like between 50s and 60 FPS. And well, the frame rate is still like a lot better than it is on the base PS5. And the game is now also a lot sharper than the base PS5 version, but the visual settings are actually the same as the base PS5. So the texture quality, the draw distance, foliage, and all that is also the same, but it just looks a lot sharper thanks to PSSR, where in quality mode, the resolution is upscaled from an 1080p resolution to that of 2160p. And the speed mode, which is the 60 FPS mode, the resolution is upscaled from 1080p to 1440p using PSSR. So it's thanks to the PSSR that the game actually looks a lot sharper than the base PS5 version. And in terms of frame rate, the PS5 Pro does have an advantage over the base PS5 with about like 5 to 10 FPS. So it's not bad, but it's not great either. Dragon's Dogma II is actually running really well now, especially on the PS5 Pro. And so there are a lot of different settings that you can use and play around with, though it is highly recommended that you do have a 120 Hz display with VRR support, because it is a game changer for Dragon's Dogma 2. I prefer to use either the balanced mode or the performance mode. So with the performance mode, if you have a 120 Hz display with VRR, because the VRR is really going to help to smoothen the FPS out, and that's by a lot, since the frame rate is very variable and it's uncapped, so it's really going to help. But when you're playing the game in performance mode, you basically get kind of a locked 60. It very rarely dips below 60, so that is really impressive. But the game is kind of blurry, and like the graphics aren't really the best. You can see a lot of shimmering in the foliage and the trees, and it's just generally very blurry. But if you do switch over to the balanced mode, it is gonna look a lot sharper, but you do not get a consistent 60 frames per second in the balanced mode, so it hovers between 48 and 60 FPS, so it's still like pretty good, The performance mode is running at only 720p. The balance mode is running at 1080p, and the quality mode runs at 1440p. But all of the modes are upscaled to 4K, and I guess that's where the problems do occur with the PSSR, especially in the performance mode, where yeah, it's the internal resolution is just so low that it just creates problems. I really hope they can fix this, but I don't know. But either way, I'm still really happy with this update. I just love to be able to play this game at 60 FPS, even though the graphics aren't really that pretty. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora. This game is not looking all that great on the PS5 Pro, and the PS5 Pro enhancement patches for this game have been pretty messy. So when they launched the first update, they actually forced everybody to play with the PSSR upscaler, and the game looked pretty bad. There was a lot of shimmering in the foliage and artifacts, and just looking pretty blurry. So it was not a good pro enhancement at first, but then a couple of weeks after, they came up with a hot fix, and they didn't really do much with the PSSR, but they did actually give us the option to play the game using the FSR upscaler, and it looks a lot better than PSSR. So with the FSR on, we don't get like the artifacts, we don't get all that shimmering in the foliage and the trees. So the game is actually a lot sharper and just looking much clearer, and just overall a whole lot better than what the game looks with the PSSR upscaler on. So this gameplay footage right here, I am running the game in fidelity mode at 60 FPS using AMD's FSR upscaler. And as of now, this is my recommended way to play the game. I do think they are gonna update the game with the latest version of PSSR pretty soon, probably, because they did actually do that with Star Wars Outlaws, and that game looks freaking fantastic now. So let's move over to that. Star Wars Outlaws. So this is another game that should have been delayed by quite a long time, honestly. At least like 6 months, maybe to a year, because this game's launch was just terrible, and the game has been just having a lot of issues ever since. But believe it or not, this game is actually shaping up to be something pretty damn amazing. So the game came out on August 30th in 2024, so it's almost been out for 6 months now, and with this last PS5 Pro update. So what they did is they updated the PSSR to the latest version, and right now the game is looking really freaking good, like in terms of fidelity at least. Like there's no shimmering in the foliage, like the grass is looking great and the trees and everything, but the performance is sometimes dipping a bit below 60 during chaotic encounters, but it has been improved by a great deal, and I'm actually loving this game. Helldivers 2. So Arrowhead actually stealth dropped the PS5 Pro patch, and there's probably a good reason for that, because it's not great. So there's still a performance mode and a resolution mode, same as before. The performance mode does boost the resolution by quite a bit though. So on the base PS5 and on the PS5 Pro, the resolution was at 1080p, and now what they did is they bumped it up to 1440p. So that's a 78% increase in pixel count. So I mean, that is really nice and all, but in terms of like frame rate, it performs the same as it did before, where it drops to like the 40s and 50s in the chaotic battles. So when there's a lot going on, and in the higher difficulties, when there's a lot more enemies and bigger enemies, it drops quite a lot. But the game is a lot sharper now though, and the resolution mode is still at 30 FPS. Silent Hill 2 Remake. Sadly, this is a pretty crappy PS5 Pro enhancement, as the frame rate is, well, pretty much all over the place in performance mode, sadly. And it's a real shame, because I love this game. But I'm actually holding off until they they come out with a proper PS5 Pro patch. Right here in this gameplay session that you're seeing right now, this frame rate is actually pretty stable, but in other areas, especially like outside, then the frame rate is just dipping a lot. The 30 FPS mode is pretty stable though it can dip 1 or 2 frames here and there, but the performance mode, like I said, it's not looking good at all. It drops down to the 50s very often, and also there's a lot of stutter issues, and yeah, it's just a very, very janky experience, sadly. So I'm just gonna hold off until Konami have addressed these issues and come out with a proper PS5 Pro patch. The Last of Us Part 1. So how does this fare on the Pro? Well, it got enhanced rendering, and its internal resolution is at 1440p, but then it's upscaled to 4K using PSSR. And it says that it targets 60 frames per second, but so far, from everything that I've played, it has been a locked 60. I have not experienced any dips whatsoever during my play times with The Last of Us Part 1. And the same goes for The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. So it's just running the same engine with the same graphical fidelity in the same mode. So yeah, it's they're impressive, but I mean they are still like originally made for the PS4. I mean like it's using the same engine as The Last of Us Part 2 did on the PS4. So it's pretty old, but then I mean obviously it's very, very enhanced and it's improved a lot, and they will with a lot of fidelity added. But still, yeah, it's looking really, really good graphics wise. Overall, it's a really solid experience.
Alright, we have come to the final part of my review of the PlayStation 5 Pro. I do have to mention one game I did not capture, and that is Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, which is a great showcase on the PS5 Pro, where it does have a Fidelity Pro mode and a Performance Pro mode. So the Performance Pro mode is actually the same as the Fidelity mode of the base PS5, but it's running at 60 frames per second. And then we have the Fidelity Pro mode, which bumps up the fidelity even more, adds more ray tracing and some more pedestrians and traffic and stuff. But yeah, I did play the game when it came out. I did finish it. I platinumed the game, and then I sold the game actually because it's not like really my cup of tea. I was never a big Ratchet and Clank fan. That's just it. So let's get on with it. My final verdict of the PS5 Pro. So is it worth it? So, and is it for you? Look, if you have a 120 hertz display with BRR, I think it is definitely worth it if you want to go the extra mile, if you want that little extra cherry on top, if you do care about like a little boost in performance, actually sometimes a big boost in performance, but also like that extra fidelity, like that crispness, then yeah, I think it's definitely worth it. If you have a 60 hertz display, not so much. I mean, some games really benefit even with a 120 hertz display. I mean, like games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, for example, where you get fidelity mode at 60 frames per second, and it doesn't really go much higher than that. I mean, if you do have 120 hertz display, it can go up to like 70, but it's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. So you're not gonna notice it very much. But and also like a game with like Demon Souls, for example, which also has that fidelity mode, but then it's running it at 60 FPS. So there are some games that just have that 60 FPS cap, but like most of the games actually do support a high frame rate mode for the 120 hertz displays. And like I mean, like a lot of games really do support that, and then you can really just go above 60 FPS all the way up to 120 FPS. So I think that's where like the biggest difference is, and that's where you're really gonna see the improvements and the benefits of the PS5 Pro. And then you also have the balance mode, which is added to a lot of games now. So which strikes well a balance between fidelity and performance mode. It's where you get like these really, really sharp visuals, but at slightly higher frame rate. So you get them up to 40 FPS instead of 30. and which is really, really nice for those who don't mind 40 FPS. Me personally, I have a hard time going below 60 frames per second because it's just such a smooth experience. And to me, it's always like the experience, the gameplay, and the smoothness. It's just more important than graphics or whatever. It's always gameplay over graphics for me. But yeah, for those who like a balance mode, then it's a great addition, especially if you do have a 120 Hz display. Well, you must have a 120 Hz display, or it's just not even going to work. It's not even going to be available for you. So I think if you have a 120 Hz display, it is really worth it. But then 700, sure, it's a pretty big asking price. I think maybe if they priced it like 650 without the disc drive, I think it would have been a slightly easier sell, and I think the reception would have been a bit better. It would have been a bit less hate around the console, I think. But still, like I still think it's worth it now, looking at how far the PSSR upscaler have come now, because it's looking amazing, like amazing right now, and the games are updating and they're looking a lot better, and also looking at like the latest games like Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, for example, which looks just phenomenal. So it's really interesting to see how the future is going to look with some upcoming games. Like how are the developers going to take advantage of the PSSR upscaler? That's very, very interesting, and I'm very hopeful. I think maybe we're going to see more examples like Demon's Souls and Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, where they just merge the two modes together. So you get that fidelity graphics, but then you get the performance of 60 FPS. So because that would be great. But I mean, still, like there are always going to be more choices on the PS5 Pro. So, and it's nice for those who like to have that, who like to tailor their experience a little bit. If you already have a PS5 and you have like a 60 Hz display, then I don't see like a big reason to upgrade to the PS5 Pro, because you're not gonna get all those benefits, because the PS5 Pro really begs you to just have that 120 Hz display, because most games now they support it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with the PS5. The base PS5 is doing amazing, so it's already an incredible console, and it's definitely not a necessity to have the PS5 Pro. But even if you're like waiting for the PS6, then you're still going to want to have a 120 Hz display, because the next generation is definitely going to take advantage of that too. So, but yeah, if you want that little extra cherry on top and you have the funds for it, and you invest in a 120 Hz display, or if you already have one, I do definitely think that it is worth it. But I mean, it's a personal opinion, and I can only speak for myself. And personally, for me, it's definitely worth it. And I'm really happy to see how far. I'm really happy to see where the PS5 Pro is now, and how it's performing. And also seeing the PSSR upscaler, how it started off, and then what it's grown to now. It's just it's really cool to see the birth and the rise of the PSSR. I think it's gonna go far. So it's really getting out of the beta stage right now, and it's looking very, very promising. And I can't wait to see what the upcoming games are gonna do. So, and I will be covering all the upcoming games, the big ones, the AAA games. You can count on that. So if you want to see that, you know what to do. Subscribe. And yeah, that's gonna do it for the video. So tell me, do you have a PS5 Pro? Are you looking to maybe get a PS5 Pro? Are you not sure whether you want to get a PS5 Pro? Did this video maybe help you in deciding whether you want to get one or not get one? Please do let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you didn't, give it a dislike, and comment. Let me know if there's anything I can do to improve. And if you want to see more PS5 Pro content, you know what to do. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Take care.